Welcome one and all to this rather desolate and bleak museum of the mysterious, where you will find on display the finest collection of nightmares, demons, bad fairies, and the customary denizens of the shadows. For those of you unfamiliar with the term, Haint, it's a type of ghost or evil spirit that originated in the beliefs and customs of the Gullah Geechee people, descendants of African slaves who lived predominantly in the Low Country and on the barrier islands off the coast of the Carolinas, Georgia, and North Florida. Therefore, let us take a rather macabre excursion in a discovery of one such phantom. It's a story called The Headless Haint. And be warned, this journey will carry us into the deepest, darkest reaches of the Nightfall radio show. Some time ago, a man and his wife were walking along a road on a cold and rainy night. They were soaked through and shivering, and their shoes were sticking in the mud. They were hungry. It got dark before they got where they were going. Then they came to a big house with smoke coming out of the chimney and a light from a fire shining from the window. It's the kind of house that rich folks live in. They went round the back and knocked on the door and heard somebody say, "Come on in." So they went on in, but didn't see anyone there. What they did see was a kitchen with skillets and pots and everything needed for cooking. There was meat and lard and flour and cornmeal. There was a pot of beans smoking on the fire and a rabbit boiling in a covered pot. And it all smelled so good. But there was still nobody around for them to see. But everything was set and ready for somebody. And they'd been told to come on in, so they decided then and there that if someone was going to enjoy all that good food, it might as well be them. The woman took off her muddy shoes and peeled off her wet stockings and sat down. The man took a bucket and went out to the spring house to get fresh water for the coffee. They allowed they were going to eat those brown beans and cornbread and that Molly Cottontail and drink it all down with some good hot coffee. The man had gone outside and the woman was resting her feet when in through the door came a man with no head. He was dressed fine in a coat and vest, shoes and galoshes, breeches and a starched shirt with a high collar, but he had no head. Just a raw neck and a bloody stump. "What in the name of the Lord do you want?" said the woman. And then that man started talking with no mouth to talk. He said he was in an awful misery. He said robbers killed him for his money. He said they dug around all day in the field looking for his money, but they couldn't find it. So they took him into the cellar and buried him in 2 pieces. He said it was an awful miserable thing, having your head buried in one place and your body in another. He said that he was hankering to get rid of that misery. And he said that other folks had been there and asked him what he wanted, but they hadn't asked him in the name of the Lord. But she had. And that's why he could tell her all about his misery. Now about that time the woman's husband came back, and near jumped out of his skin when he saw that raw neck standing there. The woman told the ghost who her husband was, and the Haint told who he was. And that started the whole thing all over again about how he came to be the way he was. Until that Haint said if they'd come down to the cellar with him and dig up his head, he'd be mighty grateful and would make them rich. Naturally, they said they would. And they said, "Just let us get a torch." "Don't need no torch," said the Haint. And he stuck his finger in the fire, and it lit up like a candle, bright enough to light the whole room. They went down a long way of steps until they got to the cellar. The Haint said, "Here's where my head's buried, and here's where the rest of me's buried. Y'all dig over yonder where I throw a spot of light until you touch my barrels of gold and silver money." And they dug up those barrels of gold and silver, buried under the cellar floor. And then they dug up the Haint's head and hoisted it up on the shovel. And he reached over and stuck it back on his neck. Then he took his burning finger and stuck it in a candlestick and crawled right back into the hole he'd crawled out of. And the man and the woman covered him up with dirt again. They even heard him talking again from under the ground. He said he was mighty grateful to them for burying his head and body together, and it sure did ease his misery. And he said they could have all of his land and all of his money and be as rich as he had been. So they took the candlestick and went upstairs. They washed themselves with lye soap, and the woman mixed up the cornmeal and spring water and greased the skillet with lard. She put hot coals around the skillet and on top of the lid and cooked that whole cake until it was done. The man put coffee and water in the pot and set it to boil. And they ate that supper of beans and rabbit and cornbread and coffee. And they lived in that house all of their lives and had barrels of money. And the Haint with no head never came up those stairs to bother them again.